Imagine stepping into a restaurant for the very first time. Um, you have not yet glanced at a menu.
Not a single plate of food has been served.
Truly, nor has a single glass been poured. Yet before any of that occurs, your experience has already been definitively dictated.
You notice the lighting immediately.
Absolutely. Perhaps it is uncomfortably harsh, casting, sterile shadows that make you want to shield your eyes.
Or perhaps it emanates a warm, inviting glow, a glow that immediately puts your shoulders at ease and signals comfort.
You also register the ambient noise level. That sound either wraps around you pleasantly, inviting intimate conversation, or it pushes you aggressively toward the exit with a chaotic, overwhelming crescendo.
And you process the greeting at the door. Is it warmly genuine, coldly indifferent, or frantically rushed?
In those initial fleeting seconds, without any conscious or deliberate thought, you have already made a profound judgment.
You have decided whether this physical space feels inherently safe and welcoming or whether it does not.
So what happens when you apply that exact same logic to a human being? What happens when you are the physical place someone is walking into for the very first time?
Well, today we explore the profound, often completely unconscious ways human presence functions as a tangible physical environment.
Our mission for this deep dive is to unpack the reality that first impressions operate not as superficial or shallow judgments.
No, they act as deeply primal survival mechanics. We will dissect the widespread, often romanticized myth of unfiltered authenticity.
And we will examine the deeply contagious transmissible nature of human moods. You must consider the profound weight of your own daily interactions as we navigate this concept.
The transition from evaluating a physical architectural space to evaluating a person is entirely seamless.
Why is it so seamless, though?
Because the human brain utilizes the exact same neurological mechanism for both.
I find that seamless transition fascinating. I mean,
Yeah.
if my primal brain is executing this rapid-fire mathematics to judge a room or a restaurant,
That implies every single person you meet is performing that exact same calculus about you.
indeed, first impressions are brutally fast, and they are rarely, if ever, rational. Human beings are fundamentally wired for efficiency.
For efficiency, and certainly not for fairness or equity, we're constantly, relentlessly scanning our surroundings to make a singular binary decision.
Do we lean in or do we step back? We feel the impression profoundly in our physiology first.
We feel the tension in our chest or the relaxation in our posture.
Only later does the cerebral cortex scramble to construct a logical, verbal narrative to justify that initial visceral feeling.
The human brain processes these environmental and interpersonal cues in a matter of milliseconds.
Long before a single word of formal greeting is spoken.
Precisely. The nervous system is analyzing posture, microexpressions, muscular tension, and baseline vocal tone.
And this constant involuntary scanning is a deeply ingrained biological imperative.
It is crucial to understand that this rapid assessment is not an act of malice.
It's not a deliberate attempt to be superficial or dismissive of another person's complexity.
Not at all. It is a fundamental survival mechanic designed exclusively to ensure physical and emotional safety.
The primal brain must instantaneously determine if the entity standing in front of it represents a potential threat or a potential alliance.
Before people can truly understand the complexities of who you are, they must first physically experience you.
Well, I must challenge this biological reality against the prevailing societal ideal we are all steeped in from a very young age.
You are referring to the concept of depth.
I am. Modern society deeply romanticizes the poetic notion of depth. Literature, cinema, and our educational institutions constantly push the narrative of the misunderstood genius.
Or the diamond in the rough.
Yes, the diamond in the rough.
Hmm.
We are taught that we should never judge a book by its cover, that we must exercise profound patience.
To take the necessary time to truly understand the complex, hidden layers of another human being.
So if we value this depth so highly as a culture, why does our neurology stubbornly and consistently reject this beautiful, poetic ideal in favor of such ruthless, instantaneous snap judgments?
The rejection of that poetic ideal is rooted entirely in evolutionary energy conservation,
Energy conservation.
an immediate risk assessment. Uncovering the depth you describe requires a significant investment of time and cognitive energy,
Time is a luxury the primal brain assumes it absolutely does not have.
especially when evaluating a novel stimulus or an unknown environment. Consider our early human ancestors.
Let us think about them for a moment.
If they took the time to deeply analyze every unfamiliar rustle in the bushes or every approaching unknown individual,
Attempting to understand their complex inner lives before reacting.
They simply would not have survived to pass on those genetics. The brain ruthlessly prioritizes immediate safety over complex understanding.
I see. So the snap judgment serves as the crucial initial filter.
It does. Only when the environment is deemed demonstrably safe and potentially beneficial does the brain allocate the immense cognitive resources necessary to explore a person's depth,
The biological priority is always alignment and security.
making the rapid assessment an inescapable hardwired feature of all human interaction.
Consider how heavily this biological reality dictates everyday scenarios, such as a job interview or a first date.
You walk into a room to meet a prospective employer or a new colleague.
Within 3 seconds, their nervous system has categorized you.
If their initial biological scan registers harsh, anxious energy, the remaining 30 minutes of that interaction will be heavily filtered through confirmation bias.
They will unconsciously look for evidence to support their initial feeling that you are a stressful presence.
Conversely, if your initial impression signals warmth and safety, they will naturally overlook minor mistakes.
Because their brain has already decided you belong in the safe category.
That phenomenon illustrates the invisible mechanics perfectly.
So, having established that our brains are ceaselessly scanning environments for safety and alignment, we must pivot to the profound flip side of that equation.
In every single interaction you participate in, you are the environment someone else is actively scanning.
Personal presence operates directly as a spatial environment.
We have all witnessed individuals who enter a room and instantly, palpably lower the collective tension of the space.
Conversely, there are those who elevate the anxiety and air pressure in a room without uttering a single syllable,
Some individuals generate an immediate magnetic curiosity.
while others generate an impenetrable defensive distance. This phenomenon is driven by the relentless, invisible accumulation of subtle physical signals.
We instinctively view ourselves as isolated, independent entities navigating through various external physical spaces.
Rarely do we recognize that we continuously emit a tangible atmosphere.
Let us map this concept directly onto the physical elements of a room to understand the architecture of personal presence.
Let us consider the lighting of your personal environment. This represents your baseline energy.
Is your energy warm, illuminating, and inviting, allowing others to feel seen and comfortable?
Or is your lighting harsh, glaring, and akin to an interrogation, forcing people to emotionally shield themselves?
The analogy extends beautifully to acoustics.
The music, or the ambient sound of the room.
That compares directly to your quality of attention and your method of listening.
Are you providing a harmonious background that encourages others to speak freely?
Or is your constant digital distraction, your wandering eye contact, and your tendency to interrupt creating a jarring, uncomfortable static?
A static that makes communication feel exhausting.
Furthermore, the service of the restaurant equates directly to your microreactions
These are the subtle nods, the sustained eye contact, the tilt of the head.
and the facial expressions that either validate or dismiss the individual speaking to you.
Together, these elements, the lighting, the music, and the service, physically construct the psychological room you invite others into.
You function as a dynamic, emotional, and psychological ecosystem for the people around you.
You dictate the climate of the interaction.
The fascinating contradiction nestled within this concept is the profound lack of intentionality.
The vast majority of the time, this intricate environmental design is completely unintentional.
People wander through their days, broadcasting an overwhelming atmosphere.
Be it frantic anxiety, rushed impatience, cold apathy, or grounding warmth.
And they do so without the slightest realization that they are doing so,
They function as powerful, continuous transmitters.
fundamentally altering the experiences and the neurological states of everyone they encounter.
Yet they remain entirely unaware of the potent signals they are projecting into the world.
Let us explore a concrete, everyday example of this unintentional broadcasting.
Consider a manager walking into a busy, collaborative office space.
The moment they cross the threshold, the posture of the entire room stiffens.
Conversations halt, shoulders rise toward ears, and the collective breathing of the team becomes notably shallow.
The manager has not issued a single verbal directive.
They have not criticized anyone's work.
They are simply carrying the lingering, unprocessed stress of a previous difficult meeting.
They are unconsciously broadcasting an environment of high anxiety, and their team is biologically forced to adapt to that harsh climate.
They act as a thermometer, simply reflecting the heat of their previous stress.
Rather than acting as a thermostat that intentionally sets the temperature of the room.
That physiological adaptation you describe is a scientifically observable, heavily documented phenomenon known as emotional contagion.
Emotional contagion. Interacting with another human being is never merely a sterile exchange of data or vocabulary.
It is the active transmission of a physiological and emotional state,
Humans possess specialized neural networks.
including mirror neurons.
Hmm.
These cause us to automatically mimic and synchronize our facial expressions, vocalizations, postures, and movements with those of another person.
Consequently, we converge emotionally.
When you bring unfiltered, unmanaged stress into an interaction, you are literally transferring that physiological burden into the central nervous system of the person sitting across from you.
Their heart rate may begin to synchronize with your elevated heart rate.
Their breathing will match your shallow breaths.
If our presence is predominantly unintentional and we are constantly transmitting our internal states, this reality severely challenges a ubiquitous piece of modern cultural advice.
We are constantly told to just be yourself.
If we merely default to our unfiltered state in the name of this advice, we are navigating incredibly dangerous territory,
A person's default self on any given Tuesday morning might be heavily distorted.
distorted by a poor night's sleep, severe financial stress, continuous digital distraction, or deeply entrenched unconscious habits.
Operating purely on unfiltered emotion ignores the immense responsibility we bear for the emotional climates we create.
The advice to just be yourself is dangerously incomplete and intellectually lazy.
It fundamentally fails to distinguish between your core, enduring identity and your current, potentially dysregulated temporary emotional state.
If your temporary state is one of extreme frustration or impatience, unleashing that upon your colleagues, your clients, or your family under the misguided guise of authenticity is not genuine expression.
It is emotional negligence.
Well, I must raise a significant philosophical pushback here.
Please do.
If we accept that we are constantly transmitting a state, and we therefore choose to actively adjust our patterns and meticulously refine how we show up to mitigate negative emotional contagion.
Does that deliberate act not render us fundamentally performative?
Exactly. I mean, are we not essentially faking our interactions?
We risk crossing the line from genuine human beings into calculated actors.
Manipulating our external signals simply to elicit a desired pacified response from our audience.
We must critically redefine the true nature of authenticity within this specific framework.
How so?
Return to the analogy of the highly rated world-class restaurant.
The physical environment.
That establishment does not ignore its atmosphere, leave the lighting harsh and clinical, allow the dining tables to be sticky, and proudly proclaim, "This is just how we authentically are."
Instead, it meticulously refines its lighting, carefully curates its acoustics, and rigorously trains its staff.
It does this not to construct a deceptive fake facade, but to express its true culinary identity more clearly and effectively to the patron.
Conscious adjustment of your presence is not about altering or abandoning who you fundamentally are.
It is about attaining a rigorous level of self-awareness regarding how you are perceived by the external world.
You adjust your external signals to ensure they accurately align with your true intentions and your core values.
Intentionality is the necessary vehicle through which true authenticity is successfully delivered.
Consider a parent coming home from a highly stressful, demanding workday.
Their unfiltered default biological state upon walking through the front door might be one of profound exhaustion and irritability.
If they just act naturally and surrender to that default state, they immediately flood their home environment with harsh, stressful lighting.
However, their true core intention, their deepest authentic desire, is to be a loving, present, and supportive parent.
By taking a deliberate moment in the driveway to consciously adjust their presence,
To soften their facial expressions, to regulate their breathing, to intentionally leave the professional anxiety outside.
they're not being fake. They are not acting.
They're actively aligning their physical environment with their deepest authentic values.
That is a profound distinction between reactive authenticity, which is merely surrendering to temporary impulses, and intentional authenticity, which is honoring your ultimate values.
However, while an intentional, well-crafted first impression acts as the crucial initial hook, effectively opening the biological door to connection, an environment absolutely cannot survive on an artificial or shallow facade.
We must rigorously examine what transpires after those vital first few seconds have passed.
A stunningly beautiful restaurant with immaculate decor that serves terrible, inedible food will inevitably fail regardless of its initial charm.
Similarly, A highly charismatic first interaction with a human being that contains absolutely no underlying substance, reliability, or depth will not endure.
The objective is not to engineer a flawless, impenetrable, and ultimately deceptive first impression.
The true goal is to ensure that the initial feeling you deliberately project is true enough and deeply grounded enough to be sustained over the long term.
The specific elements dictating our presence, the quality and depth of our listening, the nature of our micro-reactions, the frequency of our baseline energy.
They are not rigid, immutable personality traits set permanently in stone by our genetics.
They are simply behavioral patterns.
And patterns, by their very definition, can be observed, analyzed, and systematically adjusted.
If you find that your habitual lighting is continuously pushing people away or elevating their stress, you possess the absolute agency to install a dimmer switch and alter the environment.
You're not trapped in your own unintentional broadcast.
The initial neurological scan determines whether engagement happens at all, but the subsequent interactions strictly determine the durability and the trust of the relationship.
The human brain continuously monitors its environment for cognitive dissonance.
If the initial warmth and magnetism of a first impression is subsequently followed by consistent coldness, unpredictability, or unreliability,
The brain instantly flags this inconsistency as a potential deception.
deception is immediately categorized as a survival threat.
At that point, the initial charm becomes a massive liability rather than an asset.
Sustaining the atmosphere requires that the underlying daily mechanics of your behavior flawlessly match the attractive billboard you put out front.
Consistency is the ultimate currency in human interaction.
People ultimately remember consistency far more than they remember a momentary, fleeting burst of manufactured charisma.
The initial feeling must deepen and solidify over time rather than dissolve into disappointment upon closer inspection.
Consider what happens when this consistency breaks down.
We have all experienced the exhausting reality of walking on eggshells around a highly unpredictable person.
You never know which version of their environment you are going to walk into on any given day.
That unpredictability forces your brain to remain in a constant state of hypervigilance.
Conversely, when a person's behavior is highly consistent, it creates an environment of profound psychological safety.
The individuals around you learn that they can accurately predict your emotional climate.
Predictability is frequently framed as a boring or unromantic trait in modern culture.
But in interpersonal dynamics in human neurology, predictability is the absolute foundation of trust.
That predictability, that carefully sustained and authentic atmosphere, is the true, undeniable marker of a genuinely safe and magnetic human environment.
We have journeyed through a profound reevaluation of human interaction and personal responsibility.
We are not isolated entities exchanging vocabulary in a void.
We are constantly, relentlessly transmitting complex emotional states.
The initial feeling we project into the world is a primal survival signal, a dynamic and physical environment we actively invite people into.
Most importantly, it is a space over which we hold immense power.
The power to consciously and deliberately align our external presence with our true internal identity.
We must permanently discard the comforting notion that our impact on others is passive or neutral.
The subtle environments we create through our daily presence directly dictate the quality of the connections we form.
The depth of the trust we manage to build, and the fundamental nature of the experiences we share with every single individual we encounter on our path.
You function as an active architect of the emotional reality around you, whether you choose to acknowledge that architecture or not.
Every single day, people are casually walking into your life. The person pouring your morning coffee, your professional colleagues during a tense meeting, your closest family members sitting across the dinner table.
They're all stepping through the doorway of your presence.
If your personal presence were a physical place, would people actively want to stay? Or would they quietly decide to leave before they even understood why? And most importantly, is the experience they are having the one you actually intended to create?
Thank you for tuning in to this episode of the Deep Thoughts Podcast. I hope you found insights and inspiration to take with you on your journey of self-growth. If you enjoyed the show, be sure to hit the subscribe button so you never miss an episode. And don't forget to follow us on social media to stay updated on new releases and exclusive content. See you next time, where we'll continue to help you grow and explore your full potential.